Two men, born of the same faith, raised under the same doctrine. They grew up in a community where holiness was measured by lack. The poorer you were, the purer your spirit. Emmanuel and David bonded by brotherhood and belief. They were taught early that money was the gateway to damnation, that riches dimmed the soul and lured it from salvation. And they believed it. With all their hearts, they prayed, they fasted, they gave up dreams, opportunities, ambitions, all for a promised life after this one. But in the present, they struggled, 35 and counting, still living hand to mouth, until Emmanuel saw something. Their revered spiritual leader, the same one who preached patience and warned that riches and wealth had become idols in the hearts of believers, arrived in a bulletproof SUV, draped in a designer suit, and wearing a wristwatch worth more than Emmanuel's entire life savings. He had preached against the pursuit of material success, claiming it was a betrayal of God's plan, yet his own children attended the best schools in foreign countries, wore the finest clothes, and traveled regularly from one luxurious destination to another. His entourage rivaled that of political elites, a stark contrast to the simplicity he demanded of his followers. And yet, he preached detachment from material things. The hypocrisy cut Emmanuel deep. One humid evening, as crickets hummed and the stars blinked quietly overhead, Emmanuel sat with David under the old mango tree beside the church. His heart was heavy with 1,000 thoughts, but one question sat at the center of them all. Who told us money is the root of all evil? He turned to David and said, "Isn't it strange? We say that belief has imprisoned millions. Not with bars, but with sermons. Not in cells, but in pews. If you're wealthy, you're damned. If you're comfortable, you're distracted. If you're successful, you're spiritually detached. But who told us that?" The candlelight from the prayer hall flickered in the distance, casting dancing shadows. He leaned in and continued, "David, don't you think something's off?" David raised an eyebrow. "Off? What now?" "This gospel we've followed since childhood, the message that glorifies lack, that demands we suffer now for joy later. But those who preach it?" Emmanuel scoffed. "They dine with governors, they fly private jets. Their kids don't fast for food, they fast for trend." David looked visibly disturbed. "So what are you saying, that they're frauds?" "I'm saying we're trapped," Emmanuel replied. "We're told wanting a better life is sin, yet they live better than kings. Tell me, is holiness measured by how empty our plates are?" David stood up. His voice trembled, but his words cut deep. "Do you even know what your name stands for, Emmanuel? God is with us, and yet you let your tongue spit heresy. This isn't questioning, this is rebellion. You've let the enemy poison your spirit. You need deliverance, not enlightenment." He took a breath, visibly shaken. "You must seek forgiveness, fast, go on a retreat. Cleanse whatever darkness has clouded your mind before it's too late." "I think I just started thinking for myself," Emmanuel whispered, his voice calm but firm. "Or maybe I'm just thinking outside what we were taught." In that moment, decades of friendship cracked, and something even deeper broke. The blind obedience Emmanuel had once embraced. Emmanuel chose exile from tradition. He didn't abandon his faith, he redefined it. The journey of discovery was anything but smooth. Emmanuel began reading voraciously, questioning every idea that had once been sacred, and unlearning doctrines that no longer aligned with his soul. The deeper he searched, the more resistance he encountered, not just from the world, but from within. Doubts haunted him, isolation crept in, and his own faith seemed to tremble on the edge. Still, his dedication remained unwavering. he sought out the stories of spiritual pioneers who had built legacies, not out of greed, but out of a desire to uplift their communities. These men had found a way to harmonize wealth with worship, influence with humility. Driven by their examples, Emmanuel immersed himself in learning. He launched a small agribusiness with borrowed funds, made mistakes, lost money, and faced ridicule. But he pressed on, driven by a vision larger than himself. With every setback came renewed hunger, and with every lesson, a new layer of truth. Slowly, painfully, Emmanuel was becoming the man he was destined to be. He wasn't chasing riches, he was chasing freedom from the mental and religious cages that had bound him for so long. It wasn't easy. He was mocked, called a heretic, abandoned by his community, but he persisted because now he knew poverty was never piety and abundance was never rebellion. A few years later, the name Emmanuel Ease had become a beacon, not just for his community, but for anyone who had ever felt trapped by faith, twisted into fear. A banner hung across the entrance of a grand community hall, Faith and Wealth Symposium, hosted by Emmanuel Ease. But this was no ordinary event. Thousands gathered from across towns, regions, and borders. The crowd was electric with anticipation. There were elders curious to unlearn, youths desperate for clarity, and skeptics hoping to disprove him. Cameras flashed, microphones buzzed, and then he stepped on stage. Gone was the quiet, troubled man beneath the mango tree. In his place stood a bold, articulate visionary, tailored but humble, eloquent but grounded. He smiled before he spoke, letting silence build gravity. "My people," he began, "we've been taught that money corrupts. But I ask you, why then do the corrupt have all the money?" Murmurs rippled through the audience. He walked them through his journey, from rejection to revelation, from scarcity to success. He spoke not only of profits but of purpose. He shared how wealth, in the right hands, becomes a force for healing. Emmanuel had built over 200 housing units for displaced families. He funded startups led by underprivileged youth. He established free education centers where faith and entrepreneurship were taught side by side. He had created not just wealth, but impact. The most stunning moment came when he unveiled his foundation's next goal, creating a fund for emergency healthcare access across rural hospitals, so no one would die from poverty at the hospital gate again. And every time he spoke, he echoed one truth. We were lied to, not by bad men, but by broken systems. David was no longer just another congregant. He had risen to become one of the lead pastors in the very church where he and Emmanuel had first found faith. Revered by many, he was a man deeply rooted in doctrine, one that insisted the less you had, the purer your soul, and the closer you were to making heaven. David had grown into this belief so fully that he preached with fiery conviction. Earthly prosperity was a distraction, and money was the cause of all sin. When Emmanuel left the church and began questioning the very foundation of their teachings, David had not only distanced himself, he stood publicly against him. He denounced Emmanuel from the pulpit, calling him a spiritual renegade, a deceiver led astray by the lusts of the world. His sermons were laced with bitter warnings to others not to follow the path of rebellion. But everything changed one night. Sitting in his modest office, David turned on the TV. There Emmanuel was, speaking with power, with clarity, with vision, to thousands who hung on to every word. His name echoed in halls of influence, and though David wanted to hate it, he couldn't deny the impact. Schools, homes, hospitals, uplifted lives. It was everything David had dreamed of achieving for the kingdom. Only now it was being done by the very man he rejected. Some part of him resonated with Emmanuel's message now, quietly, regretfully. But it was too late. He had gone too deep. Too many sermons, too many declarations, too many souls tied to his unwavering doctrine. If he turned back now, the church might collapse, his authority would crumble, the flock might scatter. And so he remained, a prisoner in the temple he helped build. He turned off the TV and sat in silence. Was I wrong? He would never say it aloud, but the truth, it was already burning in his heart. David never reached out. Shame wouldn't let him, but he began attending Emmanuel's symposiums in secret. He sat at the back, unnoticed, listening, absorbing. And each time Emmanuel spoke, David felt a piece of the cage in his mind fall away. One day, Emmanuel ended his session with these words, "We've been taught that money is a god. It's not. It's a tool. And tools, when placed in the hands of the righteous, become weapons of transformation. Who told you that to be spiritual, you must be poor? Who told you to settle for less when your Creator gave you dominion? Break free. Your soul deserves more than struggle." David wept quietly, this time not from shame, but from awakening. And with that awakening came fear. He knew the truth now. Emmanuel had not fallen. He had risen above the limitations of a doctrine that no longer served its people. And David, for the first time, saw it clearly. But clarity, as freeing as it was, came with a cruel weight, because to act on it meant risking everything: his position, his elders, his congregation, his life's work. All of it had been built on the foundation of a belief system that glorified lack and vilified prosperity. If he changed now, it would feel like betrayal, not just to others, but to his own legacy. How could he take that step? How would he explain the contradiction? Would his people understand? Would they forgive? Could they follow? That night, alone in his spacious office, he stood at the window looking out over the darkened sanctuary. The silence around him seemed to lean in as if demanding an answer. He whispered into the void, "What should I do now?" If this story inspired you or made you question something deep within, then let it ignite a change. Please help us grow this channel by sharing this video, giving it a thumbs up, leaving a comment below. And most importantly, hit the subscribe button so more people can discover powerful stories like this one. We tell the stories that others won't, the ones that spark revolutions in the mind. Stay awakened. Stay inspired.